This is a body of work that I would say extends to kind of the larger framing of my practice. That's really about the questioning of optics and the politics that's embedded in image making. So this particular work is related to a particular geography. It's a result of a journey I took in 2014 in West Africa, traveling along migration routes at the height of the so-called migration crisis. And it was a sort of questioning of how certain bodies, particularly marginalized and vulnerable bodies, are depicted in the media, but also how the perpetuation of certain images push forward a problematic politics around their narratives. So the work is really, generally speaking, an investigation of what does it mean to point a camera, to create an image within a contested and political context. So, the main work here behind me is a series of photographs that are not just taken with a camera, but they're taken through an antique device that's called a theodolite, which is essentially what engineers use to measure the level of the land. And it's a telescopic device that kind of allowed me to take images of very distant places. It was important for me to do that because I was thinking through a lot of ideas around surveillance and voyeurism, and so then the tool itself becomes a part of the concept behind the work. It comes to the forefront of what the work is about. This project was not just about documenting certain landscapes through images, but I also found a historic text that just so happens to portray and describe trade routes from the 11th century. It was written by an 11th century Arab Andalusian scientist named Al-Bakri, and it just so happens that those same routes from the 11th century are the same routes that migrants are traveling through today. And so it became a strategy for me to use the book as a kind of travel guide, and to kind of juxtapose it and compare it to the landscapes, and many of them being conflict territories and conflicted landscapes that are juxtaposed with what's described in the book. And so there's ways in which I unfold these double narratives, but it's also about really unfolding and understanding contemporary political context through very long-term history, because oftentimes, of course, media-driven narratives are very contemporary and they don't contextualize within a long-term history. And so for me, this is what my work is about. And so it's also then important for me to explore it through different media. In the case of the other two works that you're pointing out, to my left here is a sculpture that's a sort of recreation of the very first diagram that accurately depicts the optics of vision. And it's a book that was written again in the 11th century by an Arab Iraqi scientist named Ibn Haytham. And essentially, it addresses the ways in which knowledge has been around for so long, but is often historically erased and sort of reinvented or stolen or appropriated. And so, in fact, Ibn Haytham, until recently, due to digitization of a lot of these old manuscripts, was kind of written out of history. I mean, I think for me it's important that my works exist within institutions like this one, where a dialogue can happen around the process of not just art making, but the political context in which it happens. So of course, Germany being in the Western world, I think there's a lot of things that need to be made visible about how marginalized people around the world are represented as a result of power dynamics. And so in a way, I see it as my role as an artist, but as an artist from a particular geography, given that I'm from North Africa, to relay these narratives in a way that kind of undoes certain assumptions about histories that have been dominant in the Western world for a long time.